Good afternoon. My name is Jayne Lewis, and I work for a company that probably very few of you have heard of. It's called Real Journeys, and we are a tourism company that works down in the South Island of New Zealand. We only started using Maximo last year, so we're a relatively novice user. We've only been using it since last winter, and this is just a general introduction of who we are, some interesting tales from our deployment last year, and how we actually use the product, the Maximo product. Bearing in mind we don't have a lot of experience with it, so this is quite a high-level presentation, and if there are any difficult questions, obviously ask Johannes. Thank you. This is our company structure. There's a lot of different company names here. The parent is a company called Wayfair, and if you're in the South Island and you do a tour or take any product from any of the companies you see on the screen, it's the Real Journeys engineering team that does the maintenance, the engineering work and the projects for those companies. Different products for different reasons. Sales and marketing could explain it. Go Orange is quite prominent. They do a lot of things. We operate the Earnslaw. We own the International Antarctic Centre in Christchurch, Cardrona Ski Field, a lot of stuff around Stewart Island, all sorts of things like that. So it's a reasonably diverse company now. This is where we operate in a lot of locations. It's primarily based in the Queenstown area, all around Fiordland, a little bit in Stewart Island, and a little bit up in Christchurch. Am I too far away? Is that better? Sorry. So a lot of different company names. So this is what we do. This is what you would likely see. You could obviously do the usual things. You'd go on a boat cruise or take a coach somewhere, a nice meal, jet boating, rafting, all that fun stuff that Queenstown and Fiordland is known for. We have quite a diverse range of products that are offered through the different companies. I'm not saying this as a sales pitch, more just to show the diversity of where we operate and the types of activities that the engineering team supports, and Maximo is the tool that we use for most of that. Our asset portfolio is reasonably modest compared to what a lot of you will operate. We operate 37 vessels, for example. The smallest is 6 metres, the largest is 50 metres. We have quite a few around the 35 to 40 metre mark. And then, of course, we have some quite big workshops dotted around the place so we can pull them out of the water and do all the maintenance and such on them. We also have a lot of tenders and kayaks and rafts in addition to that. Most of our vessels are for passenger transport and cruising. We also have workboats for inspections and diving and such, and we have a lot of cargo vessels for all the logistics necessary to support the thousands of passengers. We have quite a large fleet. A large fleet in the South Island perspective, I guess. There's 68 coaches. Some of them are very big, most are modest. They do a lot of work on dusty roads, taking you into the back roads of Queenstown or around Fiordland National Park and that kind of thing. We also have quite a large vessel fleet, everything from hi-abs and vans and coaches down to little electric motorbikes and a rental fleet that people can hire out. We do recently have now a fleet of Unimogs, which have been quite fun to maintain. So if you do a rafting trip with Go Orange, your shuttle will be a Unimog down the river, which is quite something to climb into and quite something to maintain. We have a lot of infrastructure. Obviously, the forward-facing aspects of the company are all of the boats and the vessels, but as many will appreciate, if you're working in a remote area, you need to be very self-sufficient. So you need to have basically all your own power and facilities for all the people that are coming through. So we have a lot of buildings, workshops, storage depots, catering plants. Just like the airline industry, if you're trying to feed several thousand people on a vessel, it makes more sense to have a catering facility on shore, do the meals en masse, and then deliver them to the vessel rather than use a small galley. So in Milford Sound, for example, there's a lot of buildings like that hidden away, chiller rooms, storage, all the laundry facilities and all that stuff. There's visitors centres, staff accommodation, administration, cafes, restaurants. We own breweries now that we operate, so that's quite diverse. And the utilities, I will stress our power generation and distribution is very modest compared to a lot of the people in the room and what you're familiar with. But we do have a mix of very small generation facilities, a transmission. We have a couple of small hydro plants and that kind of thing that we have to maintain. We have a lot of water supplies, wastewater treatment, sewage treatment, and a lot of logistics support as well, because obviously everything in the buildings. We own a big facility. It's a farm near Queenstown, and that's basically in the last 3 years been turned into a small village to cater for several thousand people a day. So, and there's many wharves, moorings and slipways and such that we operate. So why asset management at Rail Journeys? The company started quite modestly back in 2008, and then 2011 engineering became the custodian of all the assets, which was a bit of a change. Previously they just had a bunch of local teams everywhere, and then in 2013 we got serious and thought, let's make an asset management plan, which was a bit of a foreign word at the time, but it was reasonably well received. And that's when our board started to go on quite the spending spree and start buying all these different companies that I've shown on previous slides. So by 2015, 2016, we had Go Orange, Cadrona, the High Country Farm. We'd bought Black Cat Cruises in Christchurch, the Antarctic Centre, Thunderjet, Queenstown Rafting, Kiwi Discovery. We'd started restaurants. I think the repair and maintenance budget was about 10 million at this point, which is quite modest, but the capital budget was also maybe 5 million. So we were, as an engineering department, managing about 15 million of annual spend around 2015. And of course it was Excel. We were using spreadsheets for all of this work at the time, which is the perfect tool to manage that diverse workload of repairs, maintenance, correctives, compliance needs to meet our hundreds of concessions that we have working in that part of the world. So you can probably appreciate some cracks were beginning to show. It had grown very quickly. The board of the company took the very sensible decision and started bringing in a lot of people from other industries, and they brought with them knowledge of a mature asset management systems in their previous places of work, and that was the catalyst for proper asset management to begin at Rail Journeys. So that process began in 2015 when we kicked off the Maximo project, in addition to a few other things, and we started to get serious about a proper asset management system. Obviously using spreadsheets for planning, scheduling and analytics is quite limiting, and it had become quite a serious business risk for us, so it became quite an important strategic decision for the company to implement something proper. Moving to an EAM system, most of you are probably quite familiar with this, and you can probably appreciate that what we were doing was inefficient. It was quite risky, and it was quite unsustainable. We're having a lot of close calls where we almost weren't getting work done in time. It was heavily reactive, probably 80-90% reactive, and we certainly needed a more mature and sophisticated way to collect information, store it, analyse it. Our asset data was spread in many different locations. It was becoming very difficult for the engineering team. We chose Maximo for reasons that you're probably quite familiar with. It's a reasonably well-known and proven system in New Zealand. We decided it was quite low risk, and we were after a solution that would handle all of our engineering activities, projects, corrective work, PMs, all that kind of stuff, and also hold all the engineering data. So that was a good solution in that regard, and we wanted something that would be reasonably robust in terms of expansion and upgrades and things like that. So our deployment story, I wasn't around at the beginning of the project, but I am told that the original plan was approval in February of 2016 and a go live in May of 2016. And laughter is allowed at that ambition. Unlimited ambition, it seems, at the beginning of the project. Obviously, we didn't achieve that. The actual deployment was in April of 2018, which is possibly a bit more sensible, and there were some reasons for that. Interestingly, we didn't go so much over budget. The budget overrun was only about 10%. It was quite modest, but obviously we were 2 years longer than promised, and that was certainly noted within the company. The observations from that were probably nothing startling for people that have done recent deployment projects. We struggled to get the right resources on the project. At the beginning, there was 2 part-time staff trying to manage a Maximo deployment in a company that had no asset management pedigree. So that was an interesting beginning. One of them was myself. I was part-time. I'm a process engineer from oil and gas, so obviously wasn't bringing a lot of relevant skills to an IT deployment project. And the other guy was a part-timer from our IT team. He was very skilled, but he wasn't a business analyst. He wasn't an IT project specialist. So we were obviously lacking some key skills and experience, and we were both part-time. So that certainly played a part. And the other part was we used the Microsoft Navision system for our procurement and financial transactions and inventory management. And our version of it at the time was heavily customised. It had benefited, shall we say, from years of tinkering and customisations. And in true New Zealand style, it was not well documented, all of those customisations. So the lack of knowledge of what we had on the Navision side made getting the integrations correct quite a difficult proposition. And we ended up with 12 integrations, 11 of which were between Maximo and Navision, so it's quite a high number of integrations. So getting those correct with the team that we had was what took the time. So our issues, as I saw them, we had a bit of difficulty bridging the gap between what we perceived as our asset management requirements and what the actual technical solution would be. So we knew we wanted an asset management system, we knew we wanted it to do this and that and so forth, and then we had a lot of very Maximo, or they had a lot of experience in Maximo trying to provide a technical solution, and it just wasn't gelling, and I think that just reflects that we didn't have the right sort of people in the team for the time, and also with our highly customised version of Navision, because we didn't understand what we had and we couldn't find out, there was a wee bit of trial and error to get successful integrations happening there. So that was what contributed to a 2-year development phase instead of 3 months, although I'm not sure anyone's managed a 3-month project for Maximo. If they have, I take my hat off to you. Oh, well done. Yes, I think if we'd stuck to an out of the box and plugged it in and loaded up our asset information, we might have stood more of a chance, but we did not choose that approach. So what we actually ended up having to do was we went back to the beginning in many ways, and we re-looked at what are our business processes, what are our needs, and we basically reconfirmed the functional requirements. But we were more successful in the second round because we had at that point 18 months of experience in trying to make this work. So we'd been forced to ask a lot of questions about how we want to operate, how we want asset management in our company to be, what are our roles and responsibilities going to be. Basically, we had a little bit of knowledge of what we were trying to do, which meant we made better choices in terms of our functional requirements. We got in some further expertise to do a bit of an external health check. So we got some people from, I think, the Theta company that were experienced in Maximo and Navision and deployment and so forth, and they facilitated a health check of our project. They helped us identify what it was we needed, what we actually had in terms of our current system design, and then to identify and make a plan for all the work that was needed from where we were at that time through to a successful deployment. And that was really useful. Once we had a plan, we worked the plan, and things were relatively smooth from that point on. So that was a good move, and it really just highlighted that if we'd had the right people from the beginning, maybe it would have been a bit less pain for us. So we ended up focusing a lot on the integrations. We had to change a lot of them. We had to build 3 more compared to what we have, and the deployment then followed after that. Just to give a bit of this is half of our integrations. The green is what's happening in Navision, and the blue is what's happening in Maximo. I won't go through this other than to stress the arrows don't all go one way. Basically, the traffic, instead of just following a usual workflow process through Maximo and maybe updating Navision, data is bouncing back and forth quite regularly between the 2 systems. So it's a very scenic route from work order request to actually completing the job, because there's a lot of transactions between the 2 systems and a lot of opportunities for errors or things to go wrong. This is the second half of our integrations. It doesn't fit on one page. We have one to our payroll system as well. So actually, if I go back, the lessons that we learned, I should have made a lessons learned slide. I'd probably highlight 3 things, most of which will probably be no surprise to people. The first is that IT projects deserve a dedicated project team, people with the right skills and experience, the right availability. They should be treated with the same respect as any other major project that you might undertake in your company, and that was something that we neglected the first time round. Happily, Real Journeys has learnt that lesson, and they've had 2 reasonably sized IT projects since, and they have put the correct resources towards them. So they've learned and adapted quite quickly, which has been good. The second point that was very apparent with our project is the importance of understanding the functional requirements when you want to implement a new system or to make a change. And it's not just about getting the list of what are all the things we want. Once you've got that wish list, what are actually givens, what's a must-have, what are things you can compromise on, what are your business processes going to be, what's going to be your roles. And I guess a key decision for many would be, how much do we want to change our business processes and our roles and our systems? Do we change what we do and how our company operates and keep our software system as it is, our tool? Or do we try and customise the system heavily and just keep doing things the way we did before? Initially, when we started Maximo, we'd hoped to do a out-of-the-box 3-month project because we were going to use vanilla Maximo, and that was the precursor for the speedy implementation planning. In the end, we built 12 interfaces and we heavily customised large aspects of Maximo, and we had to disable a lot of useful features because our heavily customised division wouldn't accept them. So we strayed from our objective of out-of-the-box vanilla Maximo quite a lot. Since our project, we've actually deployed vanilla Navision, which has almost no customisation. So now next year we're going to take the opportunity to undo some of our previous decisions, if you will, and to go back to more vanilla Maximo, to reinstate some of the features that we've disabled and that kind of thing. So it's a nice opportunity for us. How do we use Maximo? Bearing in mind we've been using it for not even 18 months. We do a lot of the usual stuff that you'd expect: job plans, PMs, work orders, recording the asset information and meters. We use the Certus mobile application. The reason for that, we would love to use work centres, but we are running Maximo 7605, which obviously doesn't support the work centres. So we run Certus mobile, and our technicians all just use tablets out in the field, and that works very well. They download all their data at the start of the day, go off to wherever they are. Typically there's no Wi-Fi or signal where they are, so they just do their work on the tablet using either the work order record or making service requests with all the information that gets processed in our back office, and that's been working quite well for us. To date, we do need to expand our IT infrastructure in some spots so they have Wi-Fi, and that's getting better. We don't yet do full forecasting, and the main reason for that is we aren't yet using any scheduler tool. We plan to be doing that within the next few months. So we're just doing the more basic forecasting that you can do without scheduler. We don't collect failure mode data properly yet, but we are starting to. We obviously don't do predictive maintenance. We're not using tools, and we're not using the safety module, but we have plans to eventually use these things. This just reflects where we are on our, I guess, the path from starting to use a EAM Maximo system to actually gaining your competence at it. So some of the more creative options that we've come up with for purchasing, once we've planned purchase orders within our work order, when the work order is approved, all the purchase orders get created, approved and sent to Navision, and we use a dynamic attachment button to send them automatically out to the vendor. We've changed the list view that you see so that you can easily see, has the purchase order been sent out. So purchase orders are almost invisible to a lot of our guys now. They're just part of your job plan, your PM. They come through to the work order, you hit approve, they go out with one button from there. It's very straightforward. And on our tablets, the Certus mobile app version that we have does not let you view or receive purchase orders for service information on tablets, which is a shame because most of our purchasing is for contractors and services. So we have developed a little report when any work order is approved in our system. A little table gets created of all the purchasing information. It gets made into a PDF and attached to the work order, which means on a tablet you can see all the purchasing information, even if you're out of range. So then our technicians can look and say, oh yes, those contractors came and those didn't, and as part of completing the job, they review all the purchase order information, and completing the job is their signal that we can receive all of those on their behalf from the office as their support. So that's improved our receipting accuracy quite significantly, actually. We've done a lot of PM consolidation. As an example, every winter we pull most of our coaches and our boats out of service and give them anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks of TLC. We do a lot of compliance work and upgrades and so forth because there's no passengers on board. So we take advantage of the fact that tourist numbers are down in the winter, and that's our busy time. Initially we had a very complicated hierarchy of PMs and work orders and all that sort of stuff, one for every task almost. And then we consolidated that down and thought, wow, if you're working on a bus's electrical system and there's 15 jobs for that, just one PM, one work order, 15 task lines. And so we typically took a coach from 100 work orders down to maybe 20, and it was a lot less administration, a fewer purchase orders and that kind of thing. So that was a nice improvement. We've done the same sort of thing with, say you go to Milford Sound and you need to do fire extinguisher checks or electrical appliance checks. We just have one PM and one work order, one purchase order for all of the buildings rather than a separate one for each building. So that's greatly reduced the records and the purchase orders and such that we need to manage, which has been a nice improvement. The real benefits of Maximo for us, I won't dwell on these too much because they're exactly what you'd expect. Our data managing and reporting is a lot more comprehensive. We can see a lot more information. We know where it is. A lot of our reporting is automated, dashboards and automatic email reports and that kind of thing. So there's a lot more visibility about what we're doing, how we're doing it. Obviously our workforce efficiency is significantly improved. We have a lot less general overheads, which used to capture all of our planning. And the more we grow our PM library, the more efficiency we expect to gain. One good example of that is every winter we take most of our boats out of service for a few weeks to do a range of work on them. That used to take us about 800 hours at the start of, or in every autumn to plan, and already we're down to 150 hours of planning for the boats. So that's, I think I figured it out earlier, about 5 months of one person just saved in year 2. So that's just one example of the efficiencies that we've been able to see. And our supply team has also noticed a big improvement as well. They don't have to send out and handle all the purchase orders anymore. We do that. Most of them are pre-planned. There's a lot less variety in what's being purchased and who from, because a lot of that's pre-planned. And also we're purchasing a lot less inventory. They got quite upset at times when we would buy very large, expensive, shiny things that were actually sitting in stock on the shelf. It was unfortunate and it was happening a lot. So Maximo has prevented that. So where are we now? Originally we started somewhere between reactive, fix it when it breaks, and struggling, right back at the beginning. And I'd say right now we're near the bottom. We treat information as an asset. We've got systems. We're slowly populating in them and gaining confidence, but we're basically about to hit that nice upward slope where we start using the tool in its full capabilities. We do obviously a lot of planned maintenance now, but it's predominantly meter-based and time-based, and in time we'd like to, next year we plan to do a lot more condition monitoring and that kind of thing. So our future plans, obviously we want to get fully into forecasting and scheduling and all the optimisation that comes with that, optimise bills and materials, centre supply, optimise purchasing, load optimisation of resources. We have to be quite careful about grouping work orders by location. You don't want to have 3 trips to Milford Sound in a week when it takes a 5-hour round trip to get there. That's not so efficient, so we need to be able to start using those features. So we're looking forward to having scheduler. We need to introduce more KPIs. We use a product called eRoads for our coaches, and that monitors the odometer usage and the hubometer. There's a nice little console on the driver on the dashboard, so we're actually looking at ways to, one, get that meter information and other coach information automatically back into the Maximo meter area, and also to link the maintenance requests on the eRoads console with our service requests so that our coach drivers can just make a service request from the bus anywhere, which would be nice. So we're working on that. Obviously we're hoping to a version upgrade so we can enjoy all the features that come with a newer version of Maximo, particularly work centres. We have a lot of plans for a lot of the new work centres, and condition monitoring is also on our wish list. So that's a very high level presentation of who we are and why a tourism company would even need to be here, which is, the fleet is obviously when you operate vessels and coaches, you need to have a lot of support for that. And so none of this is seen, but the engineering team had to manage this, and Maximo's been a very good tool, particularly being able to use tablets. Has been a very good tool for enabling us to really improve the efficiency of our work planning and how much work we can get done with our team. We have about 40 engineers, so it's quite small, but it's been a very useful exercise for us to go through, and we have big plans.